Sarah Palin stood confidently at the edge of the Fox News stage, her trademark glasses reflecting the bright studio lights, a smirk playing across her lips. The former Alaska governor had just delivered a biting attack on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's appearance during what was supposed to be a policy debate on immigration reform, and frankly, Palin had declared moments earlier, her voice dripping with mockery. Maybe if Representative Crockett spent less time picking out designer outfits and flashy jewelry and more time actually reading the legislation she votes on, we wouldn't be facing this border crisis. The studio audience gasped, then erupted, conservative supporters clapping wildly while others sat in stunned silence. The camera panned to the side entrance where Jasmine Crockett waited, mic already in hand, her expression unreadable as she prepared to walk onto the stage. Crockett, the rising Democratic star from Texas, known for her legal brilliance and composure under pressure, took a deep breath. The personal attack on her appearance wasn't just unexpected, it violated the debate terms both sides had agreed to. But Crockett didn't appear rattled. Instead, a determined glint flashed in her eyes as she reviewed the facts and figures mentally stored for this exact moment. This wasn't just another cable news segment. It was about to become a masterclass in political counterpunching that nobody watching would ever forget. Before we continue with this shocking confrontation, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss our upcoming political analysis and dramatic showdowns that reveal the true nature of today's political figures. The tension in the studio was electric. As the Fox News special American Crossroads continued its live broadcast, what had begun as a discussion on immigration policy had suddenly veered into personal territory when Sarah Palin, filling in as guest host, had taken aim at Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's appearance. Sarah Palin, at 60, was no stranger to the spotlight. The former Alaska governor and vice presidential candidate had reinvented herself as a conservative media personality after her political career. Known for her folksy speaking style and unfiltered commentary, Palin had built a loyal following among right-wing viewers who appreciated her willingness to tell it like it is. Tonight, dressed in a red blazer with an American flag pin prominently displayed, Palin seemed determined to establish dominance over her younger opponent. Across the stage, Jasmine Crockett represented a new generation of Democratic leadership. At 43, the Harvard-educated attorney and congresswoman from Texas had quickly made a name for herself with her sharp legal mind and unwavering advocacy for voting rights. Before entering Congress, she had built a reputation as a formidable civil rights attorney who never backed down from a fight. Tonight, wearing a tailored navy suit with statement earrings, ironically the very fashion choices Palin had mocked, Crockett carried herself with the confident poise of someone who had faced down tougher opponents in courtrooms across America. The stakes of this confrontation extended far beyond a single cable news segment. For Palin, this appearance was part of a calculated comeback strategy, a chance to remind conservative America of her political relevance ahead of the upcoming Republican convention where she hoped to secure a speaking slot. For Crockett, it was an opportunity to demonstrate that Democrats could effectively counter Republican talking points on immigration while maintaining dignity, something her party desperately needed with midterm elections looming. But now, with Palin's unexpected personal attack, the dynamics had shifted dramatically. Millions were watching live, with clips certain to circulate across social media within minutes. How Crockett responded would either elevate her national profile or become an embarrassing misstep replayed endlessly by political opponents. Behind the scenes, producers frantically communicated through earpieces. This wasn't the planned segment, but live television waits for no one. The show's regular host, Blake Sullivan, looked visibly uncomfortable as he prepared to introduce Crockett, unsure how to navigate the sudden tension. And now, to respond to Governor Palin's comments, please welcome to the stage United States Representative from Texas, Jasmine Crockett. The studio lights brightened as Crockett walked confidently onto the stage. She shook Sullivan's hand firmly, nodded professionally toward Palin, and took her position behind the remaining podium. The audience fell silent, phones raised to capture whatever came next. This wasn't just about immigration policy anymore. It had become a defining moment about respect, professionalism, and who truly belonged in positions of power in American politics. Jasmine Crockett adjusted her microphone, her composure unwavering despite the personal attack she'd just endured. The studio remained unusually quiet, the tension almost tangible, as viewers waited to see if she would respond in kind or try to redirect to policy discussion. "Thank you, Blake," she began, her voice steady and measured. "I came here tonight prepared to discuss the complex issues of immigration reform that affect millions of Americans. I brought facts, figures, and solutions." She paused, making deliberate eye contact with the audience. "It seems Governor Palin came prepared with..." Passion commentary. A nervous chuckle rippled through parts of the audience. Palin's supporters remained stone-faced while others leaned forward, sensing this was just the opening salvo. "But since the governor seems interested in appearances," Crockett continued, "let's talk about what appearances can tell us about substance." Palin shifted uncomfortably, her smile now forced as she realized Crockett wasn't going to simply ignore the provocation. Blake Sullivan, caught between the two women, attempted to intervene. "Perhaps we should return to the immigration topic that..." "With respect, Blake," Crockett interrupted firmly, "when personal attacks are made on live television, they deserve to be addressed before we move on. The viewers deserve that context." Sullivan nodded reluctantly and gestured for her to continue. The production assistant frantically signaled from offstage, but it was too late to steer this segment back to its planned course. Crockett turned slightly toward Palin. "Governor, you suggested I spend too much time on my appearance and not enough on legislation. That's an interesting critique coming from someone who famously charged the Republican Party over $150,000 0 cents for clothing and accessories during your vice presidential campaign, a fact reported by your own party officials to the press." The studio audience gasped. This wasn't a petty comeback, but a factual counterpunch. Palin's face flushed red as she reached for her water glass. "That's ancient history, and totally..." Palin started, but Crockett continued. "What's also interesting is that while you mock my earrings, you've never actually addressed any of the specific immigration policies I've supported." So let me help you catch up." Crockett pulled out a small folder of notes, a move that contrasted sharply with Palin's empty podium. "In the last session alone, I co-sponsored bills focused on border security technology upgrades, expedited processing for legitimate asylum seekers, and enhanced penalties for human trafficking. I have attended 37 committee hearings on immigration and border security, visited detention facilities personally, and consulted with both Border Patrol agents and humanitarian organizations." The audience was completely silent now, captivated by Crockett's methodical response. Even some of Palin's supporters appeared impressed by the Congresswoman's command of details. Sullivan, sensing a potential viral moment developing, tried again to regain control of the segment. "These are important points about policy, but I'm addressing exactly what Governor Palin raised," Crockett responded without missing a beat. "The suggestion that my appearance somehow reflects a lack of substance or preparation." "So let's be very clear about who came prepared tonight." The camera caught Palin's increasingly uncomfortable expression as she shuffled her blank note card. Sensing vulnerability, Crockett pressed further. "And while we're discussing appearances, Governor, perhaps we should talk about your decision to resign halfway through your term as Alaska's governor to pursue media opportunities. How does that appearance reflect on your commitment to public service?" The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Conservative audience members who had been chuckling at Palin's initial jab now shifted uneasily in their seats. Palin leaned into her microphone, her voice taking on the indignant tone her supporters recognized from previous media confrontations. "Now listen here. I served Alaska faithfully, and the American people know my record. You can try to twist things around with your fancy law degree talking points, but regular Americans see right through that." Crockett nodded slightly as if she'd anticipated exactly this response. "You know what regular Americans also see through, Governor? When someone attacks a woman's appearance because they can't win on facts." The studio audience erupted, half in applause, half in protest. Social media was already lighting up as clips of the exchange spread across platforms. The production team, recognizing the segment was generating exactly the kind of engagement that drives ratings, signaled to Sullivan to let the confrontation continue. Sullivan turned to Palin. "Governor, would you like to respond to the Congresswoman's points?" Palin's eyes narrowed as she gripped the podium. You bet I would. The American people are tired of smooth-talking politicians who look good on camera but deliver nothing but broken promises and open borders. While Representative Crockett is giving speeches in designer clothes, illegal immigrants are pouring across our southern border. That's the real issue here. The camera caught Crockett's subtle smile. Palin had just doubled down on the personal attack while still failing to address any specific policy points. I notice you still haven't mentioned a single immigration policy you support or oppose, Crockett responded calmly, but I'd be happy to hear your specific proposal for addressing the immigration challenges at our southern border. Do you have one to share with us tonight? The directness of the question seemed to catch Palin off guard. She began her signature pivot. What I support is putting America first, protecting our citizens from the dangers of— Excuse me, Governor, Crockett interjected, but those are slogans, not policies. I'm asking what specific legislation or executive actions you support. The audience grew restless as Palin visibly struggled. One of her supporters shouted from the audience, "Tell her about the wall," which only highlighted how Palin seemed unprepared for substantive policy discussion. Sullivan, recognizing the segment was spinning further out of control, announced, "We'll take a quick break and continue this discussion after these messages." As the commercial break began, cameras still rolling for potential behind-the-scenes content, Palin could be seen angrily conferring with her aide while Crockett calmly reviewed her notes. The confrontation was far from over, but the first rounds had made one thing clear. Crockett had come armed with far more than just a fashionable outfit. When the cameras returned from commercial break, the atmosphere in the studio had changed. What began as Sarah Palin's attempted takedown of a younger political rival had transformed into something entirely different. The production team had clearly made adjustments during the break. A split screen now showed both women simultaneously, allowing viewers to catch every reaction. Blake Sullivan, attempting to reassert control over the segment, addressed both guests. "Ladies, let's try to focus our remaining time on immigration policy rather than personal." "I'm happy to do that, Blake," Crockett interjected smoothly. "That's why I came here tonight. But I think it's important for viewers to understand something fundamental about how politics works today." She turned slightly toward Palin. "When someone like Governor Palin attacks my appearance, rather than engaging with my policy positions, it's not just a personal insult, it's a deliberate strategy to avoid substantive debate." The camera caught Palin's eyes widening. Crockett wasn't just defending herself, but exposing the tactic itself. "Now hold on just a minute," Palin countered, her voice rising. "You liberals always play the victim when you're called out. I was making a point about priorities, not just your fancy clothes." Crockett remained unruffled. "Let me show you something, Governor Palin." She reached into her folder and pulled out several printed pages. "These are transcripts from your last 5 television appearances. In each one, when pressed on policy details, you pivoted to personal attacks or cultural grievances. It's a pattern." The audience murmured as Crockett held up the highlighted transcripts. Even Sullivan looked surprised at this level of preparation. "And what's fascinating," Crockett continued, "is that you used almost identical language about Kamala Harris last month, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in February, and me tonight. Always targeting women of color's appearance, always suggesting we're somehow less serious because we dress professionally." The production team, sensing viral content gold, zoomed in on the transcripts, which clearly showed Palin's remarkably similar language across different interviews. Social media was already exploding with side-by-side comparisons being shared in real time. "That's completely unfair," Palin protested, her voice rising. "I talk about policies all the time. I wrote a whole book about American values and—" "Which brings me to my next point," Crockett continued, her timing impeccable. "I actually read your book, Governor Palin, preparing for tonight's discussion." She held up a copy of Palin's most recent publication, dog-eared with dozens of sticky notes marking pages. "I was hoping to find your detailed immigration policy proposals. Instead, I found 347 pages with plenty of complaints, but not a single specific policy solution for border security or immigration reform." The studio grew unusually quiet. Even Palin's most vocal supporters seemed stunned by Crockett's level of preparation. "So while you're concerned about my earrings," Crockett said, touching one of her statement pieces, "I've been studying your positions, or rather trying to find them. These earrings, by the way, were made by a small business owner in my district, a first-generation American who employs 23 people and pays taxes that contribute to our economy. Her immigration story is exactly what this conversation should be about. The camera caught a close-up of the distinctive handcrafted earrings as Crockett seamlessly connected her personal choice back to policy substance. It was a masterclass in turning a personal attack into a powerful policy narrative. Sullivan, recognizing the segment was generating unprecedented engagement, decided to press Palin. "Governor, do you want to respond directly to Representative Crockett's points about your policy positions?" Palin, visibly flustered, reached for familiar territory. "Look, I don't need a bunch of papers and fancy studies to know what's happening in America. Real Americans are suffering while elites in Washington debate technicalities. I speak from the heart about—" "With respect, Governor," Crockett interrupted, her tone still measured but firm, "Americans aren't suffering because of my earrings or your heart. They're affected by specific policies, and right now we're discussing immigration. So I'll ask again, what specific immigration policies do you support?" The directness of the question hung in the air. The audience leaned forward collectively, waiting. Palin shuffled her note card, cleared her throat, and launched into her response. "Well, I support secure borders, extreme vetting, ending chain migration, and making sure that we put Americans first instead of illegal immigrants. That's what real leadership looks like." Crockett nodded thoughtfully. "Those are broad concepts, Governor, but let's dig deeper. When you say extreme vetting, what specific changes to the current vetting system are you proposing?" "Our current system already includes biometric screening, extensive background checks, in-person interviews, and cross-referencing with international databases. What exactly would you add?" The question was specific, technical, and impossible to answer with generalities. Palin hesitated, visibly searching for words. "Well, I think we need to make it, more extreme than it is now," Palin responded, her trademark confidence wavering. "We need to really look at where these people are coming from and make sure they're not terrorists or criminals." Sullivan, sensing blood in the water, followed up. "So, Governor, are you saying you're not familiar with the current vetting procedures?" The moment was devastating. Palin looked directly into the camera, seemingly searching for a lifeline. "I'm saying we need to improve them. That's what leaders do. They see problems and fix them." Later on, Crockett seized the opening. "I agree entirely, Governor. Leaders identify specific problems and propose specific solutions. So let's be specific." She pulled out another document from her folder. "This is H.R. 4817, a bipartisan border security bill I co-sponsored last session. It includes enhanced technological monitoring at the border, additional immigration judges to reduce case backlogs, and streamline processing for legitimate asylum seekers while maintaining strict security protocols." She held up the document for the cameras. This bill had support from both Democrats and Republicans until partisan politics derailed it. Would you support this kind of specific solution-oriented approach? The trap was perfectly set. If Palin supported it, she would be aligning with Crockett's position. If she opposed it without knowing its contents, she would appear uninformed. Palin attempted a third option. "I'd have to read the details, but typically these bills are filled with liberal wish list items hidden in the fine print." "The bill is 24 pages, Governor," Crockett responded, handing a copy across to Palin. "Not exactly fine print. And it was co-authored by Republican Congressman Mike Garcia from California." "Would you like a moment to review it now?" The audience erupted in a mixture of laughter and applause. Palin reluctantly took the document but set it aside without opening it. "This isn't about one bill," Palin countered, trying to regain her footing. "It's about an approach to governing. While you're busy with your legal paperwork, real Americans are seeing their communities changed by mass immigration. That's what I'm fighting against." Crockett seized this opening for her final thrust. "You know what's fascinating, Governor Palin? My parents and grandparents were also concerned about seeing their communities changed. They lived through segregation in the Jim Crow South, where people who looked like me weren't allowed in certain neighborhoods." The studio fell completely silent. "So when I hear phrases like real Americans and concerns about communities changing," Crockett continued, her voice calm but resolute, "I listen very carefully. And what I've learned is that progress happens when we focus on specific policies that help all Americans, not when we use divisive language and personal attacks to avoid the hard work of governance." The camera caught Palin's stunned expression as Crockett connected the historical dots with surgical precision, exposing the loaded language without ever directly calling Palin racist, a nuance that made the point even more devastating. Blake Sullivan, recognizing he was witnessing a defining television moment, simply asked, "Governor Palin, your response?" All eyes turned to Palin, who for perhaps the first time in her media career appeared completely at a loss for words. The silence stretched for 3 excruciating seconds, an eternity in television time, before she managed to respond. "Well, obviously, I wasn't talking about that kind of community change." That's just twisting my words, which is what the liberal media always does to conservatives like me. Crockett didn't need to respond. The damage was done. Instead, she simply said, "I think the viewers can decide for themselves what was meant and what wasn't. I'd still be happy to discuss actual immigration policies whenever you're ready." The studio audience erupted in the loudest response yet. Applause, gasps, and scattered protests creating a cacophony that Sullivan struggled to speak over as he announced another commercial break. The producers, recognizing ratings gold, quickly adjusted the schedule to extend the segment further. As the cameras temporarily stopped broadcasting, Palin could be seen in animated conversation with her aide, gesturing angrily at Crockett, who remained composed at her podium, rearranging her notes and taking a sip of water. The confrontation had reached its climax, but the aftermath would extend far beyond this studio. In the hours and days following the explosive Fox News confrontation between Sarah Palin and Jasmine Crockett, the political landscape seemed to shift in real time as the segment went viral across all social media platforms. What began as Palin's attempted takedown of a younger political rival had transformed into a watershed moment in political communication, a case study in preparation versus performance politics. Within 30 minutes of the broadcast's conclusion, Crockett's response was trending #1 nationally on Twitter, with clips of the exchange being shared millions of times. The most viral moment, Crockett calmly presenting Palin with the immigration bill and offering her time to read it, had been viewed over 20 million times within the first 2 hours. The morning after the broadcast, major news networks devoted significant coverage to analyzing the confrontation. CNN's New Day featured a panel discussing the implications. What we witnessed last night wasn't just a politician defending herself from a personal attack, noted political analyst Maria Henderson. It was a masterclass in how to expose the emptiness behind certain political tactics. Representative Crockett came armed with facts, research, and specifics, including detailed knowledge of her opponent's own statements and positions. It completely upended the traditional dynamic. Even Fox News's morning programming couldn't avoid the story, though they framed it differently. Governor Palin raised important concerns about style over substance in Washington, argued conservative commentator Jason Mitchell on Fox and Friends, but perhaps got caught up in the moment with her delivery. Co-host Ainsley Earhart added, "The question is whether voters respond more to Representative Crockett's technocratic approach or Governor Palin's focus on broader American values." By midday, the White House press secretary was asked about the exchange during the daily briefing. "The president believes policy discussions should always focus on substance rather than personal attacks," she responded carefully. Representative Crockett demonstrated that focus last night, and her work on bipartisan immigration solutions reflects the kind of approach this administration supports. Meanwhile, social media response revealed a fascinating demographic divide. TikTok and Instagram were flooded with remixed clips of Crockett's most powerful moments, particularly popular among younger voters who celebrated her composure and preparation. One TikTok creator's video comparing Crockett's evidence-based approach to preparing thoroughly for a final exam garnered over 5 million views in 24 hours. "This is the energy we need in politics," wrote at Gen Z voter. "Come with receipts or don't come at all," or an Instagram story. The reaction from Palin's base was more mixed. While some loyal supporters defended her on Facebook and right-wing forums, arguing she was being ambushed by a media setup, others notably questioned her preparation. "I love Sarah's fighting spirit, but she needed more facts last night," wrote one commenter on a conservative news site. "Can't go into battle unarmed and expect to win." Political strategists from both parties recognized the significance of the moment. Republican consultant Michael Stevens appeared on MSNBC's Morning Joe, offering a surprisingly candid assessment. "What happened to Governor Palin last night? should be required viewing for every political candidate, Stevens noted. The era of skating by on talking points and cultural grievances is ending. When you go up against someone like Representative Crockett, who has clearly done her homework, you better bring more than just attitude and one-liners. Democratic strategist Rebecca Washington agreed, but added an important observation. What made Crockett's response so effective wasn't just that she was prepared. Plenty of politicians memorize talking points. It was that she systematically exposed the emptiness behind the attack itself without ever seeming defensive or rattled. By the second day, the impact reached beyond media commentary and into tangible political consequences. Crockett's campaign reported receiving over $2.00, $7 million in donations in the 24 hours following the broadcast, an extraordinary sum for a House member not in a competitive district. More significantly, Democratic congressional leadership announced Crockett would be given a prime speaking slot at the upcoming party convention, elevating her national profile dramatically. For Palin, the fallout was equally consequential. Sources close to Republican National Committee leadership leaked to Politico that her hoped-for speaking slot at the Republican convention was now under review. Several scheduled Fox News appearances were quietly postponed, and a planned fundraiser in Michigan for a congressional candidate was canceled, officially due to scheduling conflicts. Perhaps most telling was the response from female Republican politicians. While none criticized Palin directly, several made pointed statements about focusing on policy rather than personality in upcoming appearances. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who had defeated a Palin-backed primary challenger in her last election, simply told reporters with a smile, "Preparation matters in politics, just as it does in governing." By the end of the week, the confrontation had evolved from viral moment to cultural touchstone. Saturday Night Live featured a devastating parody with Cecily Strong as Palin, fumbling with empty note cards while Ego Nordham's composed Crockett methodically presented binder after binder of research. Late-night hosts similarly feasted on the moment. Stephen Colbert opened his monologue saying, "Representative Crockett didn't just come with receipts, she brought the entire cash register, accounting department, and financial audit team." Beyond the entertainment value, political scientists and communication experts began examining the exchange as a potential inflection point in political discourse. What Crockett demonstrated is that the most effective response to identity-based attacks isn't outrage or counterattacks, it's exposing the tactic itself while pivoting back to substance, explained Dr. Janelle Thompson, professor of political communication at Georgetown University. She never took the bait of making it personal, which would have played into the angry black woman stereotypes some might have expected. Instead, she remained composed while systematically dismantling both the attack and the attacker's credibility. A week after the broadcast, Congressman Crockett appeared on Meet the Press, where host Chuck Todd asked her directly about the confrontation and whether she had anticipated Palin's attack. "I didn't know exactly what form it would take," Crockett acknowledged. "But I've been in politics and in courtrooms long enough to know that when opponents can't win on facts, they often resort to personal attacks. So yes, I came prepared for that possibility." "And the extensive research on Palin's previous statements?" Todd pressed. "That's just part of doing my homework," Crockett responded. "I approach political debates the same way I approached court cases as an attorney. You research your opposition thoroughly, you anticipate their arguments, and you come armed with facts. That's not just a strategy, it's respect for the voters and the democratic process." When asked if she had any response to criticism from some conservatives that she had been unnecessarily harsh toward Palin, Crockett's answer was characteristically measured but firm. "I think there's nothing harsher than suggesting someone is unserious or unqualified based on their appearance rather than their ideas," she replied. "What I did was redirect the conversation to substance, which is what the American people deserve from their elected officials." The long-term impact of the confrontation continued to reverberate through political circles. Campaign consultants reported that candidates across the country were now requesting Crockett-style debate preparation, focusing on deep research of opponents' previous statements and positions rather than just rehearsing talking points. Media trainers noted a shift in how they advised clients preparing for hostile interviews. The Crockett method, as some began calling it, emphasized turning personal attacks into opportunities to demonstrate substance rather than responding with counterattacks or defensiveness. Perhaps most significantly, several women of color in politics reported that the viral moment had changed how they approached the persistent challenge of appearance-based criticism. As one state senator told the Washington Post, Representative Crockett showed that you don't have to choose between looking professional and being taken seriously. You can directly expose those who try to use your appearance to dismiss your ideas. For Sarah Palin, the path forward proved challenging. Her first public appearance after the confrontation came 2 weeks later at a conservative conference in Nashville. While she received polite applause from attendees, her speech was notably more subdued, with a focus on policy positions rather than cultural grievances. Gone were the most divisive one-liners that had previously been reliable, generated headlines and cheers. Whether this represented a temporary adjustment or a more fundamental reassessment remained to be seen. Jasmine Crockett, meanwhile, leveraged her newfound national profile to advance the very policies she had defended that night. The immigration bill she had presented to Palin gained 10 new co-sponsors within weeks of the confrontation, including 2 Republicans, who cited her serious approach to complex issues in their statements of support. 3 months after the confrontation, a comprehensive Pew Research Center poll found something remarkable. 64% of Americans across partisan lines agreed that political debates should focus on specific policies rather than personal characteristics, a rare point of consensus in an otherwise divided electorate. When asked about the Palin-Crockett exchange specifically, 57% believed Crockett had won the confrontation, including 34% of self-identified Republicans. Perhaps the most lasting legacy came from an unexpected source. High school and college debate coaches across the country reported incorporating the exchange into their curriculum as an example of effective response to ad hominem attacks. One debate coach in Ohio told the local newspaper, "We now call it pulling a Crockett when a student responds to a personal attack by calmly refocusing on substance while exposing the tactic itself." 6 months after that fateful night, Sarah Palin and Jasmine Crockett found themselves booked on separate segments of Meet the Press on the same Sunday. Though they didn't appear together, both were inevitably asked about their confrontation. Palin, having had time to reflect, offered a more nuanced perspective. "Look, I still believe we have substantive disagreements about the direction of this country," she said. "But I've learned that those disagreements should be the focus of our political discourse, not personal comments that distract from the real issues." When it was her turn, Crockett was asked if she felt vindicated by Palin's apparent change in approach. "This was never about vindication for me," she responded. "And it was about demonstrating what effective political discourse can and should look like. If that night contributed in some small way to elevating our national conversation, then it served its purpose." The moderator couldn't resist one final question. "And the earrings you wore that night? I understand they've become something of a symbol." Crockett smiled. "The designer has a 6-month wait list now. He's had to hire 15 new employees, including 4 immigrants who are now on the path to citizenship. That's the America I'm working to build, one where we focus on creating opportunity rather than division." As the camera panned away, the earrings caught the studio lights, a small but powerful reminder that in politics, as in life, how we respond to attacks often matters more than the attacks themselves. This confrontation between Sarah Palin and Jasmine Crockett didn't just create a viral moment. It changed how we talk about politics, how candidates prepare for debates, and how the public evaluates political performance. It reminded us that in a world of sound bites and personal attacks, substance and preparation still matter. Most importantly, it showed that the most powerful response to those who would try to diminish others based on appearance or identity is not outrage, but excellence. If you found this analysis valuable, please like, subscribe, and share this video with others who appreciate substantive political commentary. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming coverage of the most important political confrontations and their lasting impact on American democracy. Your support helps us continue bringing you in-depth stories that go beyond the headlines to reveal what's really happening in today's political arena.